Surat Al-Fatiha just to get the blessings. Then we will have the lecture with Professor Bakar, and we will also offer Q&A in the end of the session. And we also share some forms so we can receive your feedback and have some closing du'as. So when you join the session, please just mute yourself, dear excellent brothers and sisters. No recording or screenshots are allowed during the session, and all the questions will be asked in the chat. So if you have any questions directed to Professor Osman, feel free to use the chat for any questions, and we will address them in the end of the session, inshallah. If you need live transcriptions due to different needs, please press the more button in the Zoom and just request for it, and we will be happy to share live transcriptions as well if you need that. Just also briefly, if you want to have access to the recordings afterwards, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, the ISIP's YouTube channel. We will share the link to the YouTube channel so you can also listen to the first lecture. You can also join one of our Islamic Psychology WhatsApp groups resource sharing if you want to be part of the resource sharing and to be updated on what's happening in the field of IP all around the world. We also created an exclusive Al-Ghazali lecture series discussion group for all of you who want to discuss the content that Professor Osman is sharing with us during this lecture series. And that link will be also shared in the Zoom chat. We have also emailed out the links to all of you who have registered for the series as well. If you want more information about the ISIP, please join our website, the isip.foundation. There you can also get access to our digital library and also get opportunity to be a member. And if you have any question regarding the session, if you have any question regarding the topics or a direct question to Professor Osman, if you have also questions regarding if you didn't receive the registration link, if you didn't receive the quiz, email to admin@isip.foundation, and we will try to address all your questions and concerns as soon as possible. Also, there's a lot of people who want to know if they can do the quiz afterwards. That will not be possible, but you can still join the lecture series. But if you want to do the quiz, then you need to be part of all the live series, including the session last time. But we will also inform that through email if you have more specific questions, inshallah. Thank you for listening. So today's session will be about Al-Ghazali's understanding of psychological wellness and illnesses. The recording of this session and slides and mini assessment will be available within 3 days, inshallah. So check your email. And some of you have got back to us mentioning that you haven't received the email. So try to check your spam mail as well. Sometimes emails can be received in the spam mailbox as well. So feel free to check that as well, if just in case you haven't received it. All right. After the assessment is done, you will also be able to do the third quiz, of course. But all of you who just want to be participating just to benefit from the lectures, the next lecture will be Saturday, the 2nd of July. And the topic will be the significance of psychology to Al-Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin. So without any further ado, let us now present a lecture for today. It's an honor to have you with us. Professor Osman Bakar is a doctorate in Islamic philosophy from Temple University, Philadelphia, USA. Currently holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at ISTAC-IIUM, the International Islamic University of Malaysia, which is also the partner of the lecture series together with Professor Osman. He's a Emeritus Professor in Philosophy of Science at the University of Malaya, author and editor of over 40 books and more than 300 articles on various aspects of Islamic thought and civilization, particularly Islamic science and philosophy, in which he is a leading authority. He has been named among the 500 most influential Muslims in the world since 2009. So thank you so much for attending, and please forgive us for any shortcomings and make dua for us, and please fill out the short feedback form in the end. And before we let Professor Osman take over, let's just recite Surah Al-Fatiha together, inshallah. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim wa la dhalin. Amen. Without any further ado, Professor Osman, it's an honor to have you with us. The floor is yours. Most welcome.
Thank you, Brother Said. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wa mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good day. wherever you may be. So welcome to our second lecture in the series, and let me say I prepare some slides. Yes, the title of my lecture today is Al-Ghazali's Understanding of Psychological Wellness and Illnesses. Those who attend my first lecture will remember that I was saying that the term psychology, as understood today, is a little problematic if we see from the perspective of traditional science of the soul or ilmu nafs, precisely because in other words, the domain of study is not as broad as we know it is in the Islamic psychology. Now, I mentioned the concept of pneuma, the Greek pneuma, pneumatology, as a better word to describe the science of the soul of ilmu nafs in the Islamic perspective. But since I continue to use the word psychological or psychology with that understanding, the understanding that well, what's important is really to understand what Al-Ghazali believed in as far as the soul. I think the question of the term we are using it precisely because that is the term that we are currently using. All right. All right. Now basically before I go into this, I think we have to understand the context, the intellectual context in which Al-Ghazali was speaking, was writing, and it is basically, and I did mention in last lecture that there are four terms that are central to Al-Ghazali's psychology, right? Namely soul, spirit, heart, and intelligence, with the respective terms in Arabic, right? Soul, I'm dealing with nafs, spirit, ruh, heart, qalb, intelligence, aql, and of course you have a body. Just we have to understand that the body is not treated as something separate from the soul, spirit, heart, and intelligence. Certainly, in Al-Ghazali's thought, in other words, the body is integrated into that total system. Now, all right. Yeah. Now, so we are looking at the question of psychological health from the perspective of Al-Ghazali, how he understands that. Now, I would like to say this, that in Islamic civilization, before and during Al-Ghazali's time, the human health has always been viewed as one whole. I think we need to understand that that wholeness, that concept of wholeness, that concept of integral health, that not only Al-Ghazali, but before him, Ibn Sina and Farabi, others, were all viewing the issue of health from his whole perspective. Human being is regarded as a very unique creature. And of course, that uniqueness comes from the fact that man is a microcosm, is a mirror of the microcosm of the whole cosmos. Whatever exists in the universe exists within the human being, and this is a very important thing in order to understand that that wholeness of the, or that richness and wholeness of the human person. So Al-Ghazali speaks of human health when in his view, human health is about the functional relationship between the body, soul, or self, or spirit, or ego, spirit, heart, and intelligence, viewed as a whole. Now, the problem is, while a human person is one, yeah, it's viewed as one, as a whole, but in reality, man does not exist as a balance, a whole. Different parts of the human being are pulling us from into different directions. All right. In other words, our heart, his own tendencies, his own inclination, in a sense, pulling us both upward and downward, both towards the spiritual world and towards the physical world. And then our mind also is pulling us in different directions. Our soul. All right. So basically, we are a creature with many components, many parts, in fact, as rich as the universe, but all right, somehow we are fragmented. So that is the dilemma that we are facing. And for Ghazali, in order to have that holistic health, the integral health, we need to examine what are the basic, the fundamental components that constitute the human constitution. Now, Al-Ghazali spoke a lot about the states of wellness and illness in the human individual. Of course, not, of course, the physical one, the physical wellness, the physical illness, that is well understood. But here he talks about, in his writings that we have been viewing, especially in Ihya Ulumuddin, we see that he was talking about both the wellness of the body, the wellness of the heart, the wellness of the mind, the wellness of the soul, and the state of illness. Now, in Islamic tradition, wellness is defined in terms of balance, the balance that exists between all the different components of the human person. And human beings by nature are well unless otherwise affected by many different factors. So illness basically is the loss of that balance. And the purpose of medicine, whether physical or otherwise, is to restore that balance. So, and in Hirubuddin, Al-Ghazali talks a lot about the diseases of the heart, basically the things that affected the wellness of human person, the different kinds of illnesses. Now, further, Ghazali maintains that all human souls are of the same nature, but each soul has a unique natural history. What we mean by natural history here, basically this is a biophysical history, but the what do you call this? But it's also a social history. What I mean is each soul is endowed with physical characteristics, which has its own history, and then when we live in society, each soul interacts with the other soul, with the human being, lead a certain kind of life. So it has a history of that. So in that sense, that we call the each soul has a a unique history of its own, and because it enters into relation with a unique body. It's based on the philosophy, Islamic philosophy of medicine, which maintains that each soul has a unique history because it enters in relation with a unique body. Essentially, soul, spirit, heart, and intelligence refer to the one and the same spiritual substance or entity. That is the main important thing that is emphasized by Al-Ghazali. That these are different names, but in reality, they are all essentially the same. Basically, soul, spirit, heart, intelligence refer to the essence of man, that soul that was breathed into Adam, that spiritual substance defines the essence of man. That substance is able to know, is able to perceive, has intelligence, has consciousness. That is that's what that essence of man is. Now, of course, I put here the question: well, if the soul, spirit, heart, and intelligence refer to the one and the same thing, the same substance, then why the need? Then why the need for so many terms? People ask that. I come across people asking, what is the logic of that? Because it's only to confuse more. The four terms are confusing to many people. Now Al-Ghazali comes and to say, no, actually, this soul, nafs, spirit, ruh, heart, qalb, intelligence, aql, refer to the one and the same spiritual substance or entity. So why do we need that? Now, Al-Ghazali would answer this, right? Yes, yes, these mean the same thing. Now, why these terms exist is because each of these terms also points to different biophysical manifestations that have implications for human health. This we'll see later. Yeah, but at this stage I could say yes. For example, all right, the heart, qalb. So, in terms of the spiritual substance that defines the essence of man, that qalb is something is spiritual. But it is also called it is called heart because we also have a physical heart. So we have both spiritual heart and physical heart. And Al-Ghazali would maintain that there is something kind of mysterious connection between the two. Al-Ghazali writes in a few of his writings saying that he will not talk. Certainly, he does not want to talk about that inner connection between the physical heart and the spiritual heart. In his popular book, Ihya Ulumuddin. But in the other book, in the Al-Madhnun, Al-Madhnun bihi wa ahlihi, in other words, that book, what is to be supposed to be something to be not to be told to everyone. It's only a certain audience study for his time. He's talking about his time. Yes. The only thing said, well, in Ihya Ulumuddin, he mentioned that in other words, somehow in the heart there is that cavity which is referred to in Islamic medicine as the ruh, also ruh, spirit, but not the spiritual spirit, but here the psychic spirit, which in a sense is connected with the whole functioning of the human body in terms of the blood circulation, in terms of the nervous system, all that, which is exactly what has been described by medical authorities like Ibn Sina al-Razi, Muhammad Zakaria al-Razi, and so on. So they're referring to that that spirit, which is not really from the spiritual domain, but here is a psychic spirit. When it says psychic spirit, you have to understand this from the viewpoint of Islamic cosmology. There is that intermediate domain of reality which lies between the physical and the purely spiritual. That's the psychic. So the psychic borders the psychic domain, something like a barzakh, is like what they call that that domain is a kind of bridge between the physical and the spiritual. But anyway, just Al-Ghazali said, well, yes, I mean the name is the same, the heart, but referring to different to more than one thing. So in other words, the manifestation. Yeah, the heart has a biophysical manifestation in the form of the physical heart. Then the spirit, that spiritual substance, has manifestation with the ruh related to the heart, and then in terms of the nerves that in a sense returns to God, the nafs al-mutma'inna, that nafs that returns to God, that is belongs to kind of higher soul nafs, which is to be distinguished from the animal soul. So the animal soul in us, in the human being, is a biophysical manifestation of that, right? And in terms of the intelligence, all right? Again, we have different levels of intelligence, human being, and we can talk about the lower, the manifestation of the higher intelligence, the intelligence that was the first state that Allah created was referring to the aql, in intelligence. So this is what I'm saying here, and then to convey to you. Then there are different, in fact, here 4 things referring to the same spiritual reality, but they also have their biophysical manifestations with which we have to pay attention. We have to deal. Now, next one I have to say is physical and psychological health are not to be separated, but rather to be integrated. That is emphasized by Al-Ghazali. Physical and psychological health are not to be separated, but integrated. Now, what are the implications for health? What we are all saying now, in terms of different components, fundamental elements, what are the implications for health? Well, the most important implication is each person is unique in his health needs, dietary needs, physical needs, emotional needs. This is so much emphasized by the classical medical doctor, the classical physician, that uniqueness of each person. So that's why this physician will refrain, from treating 2 different persons in the same way, even they're supposed to be affected by the same illness, basically. Yeah. So each person is unique in his or her health needs. Now, Al-Ghazali, in talking about those terms, those fundamental terms related to human health, now he was referring to the terminological confusion in psychology of his time. Here I quoted a translation from Al-Ghazali's Ihya. Right? He said, quote, "Few of the leading ulama have a comprehensive knowledge of these names, meaning nafs, ruh, qalb, and aql, and their different meanings, and most of the definitions of the things named. Most of the mistakes regarding them originate in ignorance of the meaning of this name and of the way in which they are applied to different objects." And I'll quote, Now, this is from here. You may refer, these from the part of the Ihya title, "The Wonders of the Heart," the wonders of the heart. So Al-Ghazali was bemoaning the conditions of his time. Yeah? There was confusion in the understanding of these very, very fundamental terms. All right. Now, this is Al-Ghazali's clarification on that confusion. Again, I quote from here. Quote, "So it is now made clear to you that there exist the following meanings of these names: qalb, ruh, nafs, and aql." So the corporeal heart, the corporeal spirit, the appetitive or animal soul, and intelligences. There are four meanings which are denoted by four terms. There is also a fifth meaning, which is that subtle, tiny substance in which man knows and perceives. And all four of these names are applicable to it. There are then five meanings and four terms, and each term is used with two meanings. So basically, the thing that I was saying, but this is the quotation. Now, I would like to go now into discussion each of the four fundamental terms, because the issue of the issue of health that we are talking about now is related to that. We can talk about individually the health of the heart, the health of the soul, the health of the intelligence, yeah, the health of the spirit. But what is important, all right, is not to look at this individually and separately. We can for the purpose of understanding it, but in terms of health, in practical terms, it is how these different elements are related to each other. Of course, not at the essence, because the essence referring to one and the same thing, but rather in their biophysical manifestation. The biophysical manifestations are not the same, are different. I hope you can understand that. Now, let's go into fundamental ideas about these things. First, let's go into what is called the spiritual heart. Now, the essence of humanness is described by Al-Ghazali as latifa rabbaniya ruhiyya, ruhaniyya. Ruhaniyya, that is the word he used in his writing. He used this term to describe that spiritual substance which was blown into Adam and inherited by the Adam's descendants. Basically, what is that nature? First of all, it is latifa, subtle. It is subtle. Subtle substance that is ethereal, lordly or divine, and spiritual in nature. Now, when we use the word English subtle, all right, to translate latifa, we have to understand that, in a sense, the word latifa is used to refer to different beings, right? In fact, that is one of the names of Allah Himself, one of the divine names, right? So, in the general sense, latifa, subtle, means something that is beyond our ordinary sense perception. But there are degrees of that subtleness, so that that domain of creatures identified with the jinns, right, or spirit, that is subtle, since it cannot be perceived by the physical senses. So are the other angels also latifa, but at the level of pure spirituality, and then Allah Himself. Yeah. Now, that is so Al-Ghazali describes the heart, the spiritual heart, as subtle meaning of that spiritual substance, that light. That light, that inner light, that spiritual light, that is the same as the angels. So basically, these are angelic elements. Now, it's a lordly, Rabbaniyah, lordly, of course. I mean, Al-Ghazali, when he said that he's referring to the hadith that Allah created Adam in his image. In other words, the qualities, the attributes of the human being, these divine like, because man has been created in the image of God. So when Allah breathed that spirit into Adam, so that spirit possesses the qualities, attributes that are divine like. Now, of course, it is Ruhaniya spiritual. I think that is very important thing that is maintained by Al-Ghazali. Now, then I quote from Al-Ghazali here: the spiritual heart is the part of man which perceives and knows and experiences. It is addressed and held responsible and rebuked, and it has connection with the physical heart. This is a further description of the spiritual heart by Al-Ghazali. Then the spiritual heart is the center of man's whole being. It is important, the center. In fact, we are looking back why the heart is called the heart, why that particular substance in man is called the heart, is because of its centrality in the human constitution. In other words, that heart is the center of the human's being, right? Everything has a center, and the center of the human being is the heart, both physical and the spiritual. Now, I would like to go into the biophysical manifestations, because this is what we are interested in. So, what are the biophysical manifestations of the spiritual heart? I mentioned here two things, all right? First, the physical heart. We all have physical heart, right? But that physical heart tells something about spiritual heart. And this is the center of the physical body. In fact, that's a kind of analogy between physical heart and spiritual heart. We cannot see the spiritual heart, but by knowing the nature of the physical heart, the functions of the physical heart, the activities of the physical heart. So Al-Ghazali will argue that gives us some idea, a kind of analogical reasoning, because that will be exactly what the spiritual heart is all about, but it is, instead of physical, it is spiritual. So the physical heart is provided as a means for human being to understand the spiritual heart itself. Now, number two, all right, the biophysical, this very, very important biophysical manifestation, but related to the physical heart, a cavity in the physical heart in which there is black blood, the source and seat of the psychic spirit or raw, that is of interest to physicians, which I already mentioned earlier. This is an important aspect of the human constitution studied by Muslim physicians. Now, I would like to go on to the question of this psychic spirit in that cavity in the physical heart. What is this? Well, this I'm just quoting here from Ghazali's own writing. First, the psychic spirit refers to a subtle vapor produced by the heat of the heart. In saying this, Ghazali, I made a comparison. Ghazali, of course, was quite influenced, and he knew a lot about the medicine of Ibn Sina, and in fact, he accepted the philosophy of medicine of Ibn Sina, despite the fact that he was regarded as a fierce critic of Ibn Sina on other aspects. But when it comes to science, to medicine, I think Al-Ghazali adopts the views of the physicians who came before him. Now, the psychic spirit spreads by means of the positive arteries to all the other parts of the body. So that's the connection between that psychic spirit and all parts of the body. Now, number three, Al-Ghazali's light analogy is, this analogy is given by Al-Ghazali, is circulation in the body and the overflowing from it of the light of life, sense perception, sight, hearing, and smelling to the members of the body resemble the flood of light from a lamp, which is moved about throughout the house. Whenever the lamp is brought to any part of the house, it is lighted by it. So he was trying to explain this technical term in medicine, psychic spirit, so that it could be understood by ordinary people, basically. Right. Now, regarding the metaphysical spirit, we have the psychic spirit, now the metaphysical spirit, which is what we are mostly interested in, that essence of man. Now, the metaphysical spirit, that is identical to the spiritual heart. This is what Al-Ghazali meant, metaphysical spirit here, which is higher in ontological status compared to the psychic spirit. This is the spiritual. Yeah? So it is identical to the spiritual heart. It knows and perceives. Now, it is the meaning intended by God in the Quran, in the Surah 17, verse 85, Surah Al-Isra. Yeah? Now, this say the spirit is my Lord's affair. Actually, it's referring to this verse, right? وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, right? They ask you concerning the spirit in this verse 85, huh? Says the Surah 17. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, they ask you concerning the spirit. قُلْ الرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, say the spirit is from the command of my Lord. Yeah. And then the verse goes, وَمَا أُوتِيتُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, and you have not been given knowledge save a little. Yeah. وَمَا أُوتِيتُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Well, remember, just on the side is the one term, because I heard comments from one religious teacher when I wanted to know more about this verse. I said, well, why should you want to know more about this? Because the Quran, the God Himself says, "The Spirit is my Lord's affair," and they have not given much knowledge, very, very, very little. Well, precisely, what is little from the side of God is a lot from the side of man. And we want to know, yeah, basically, is it possible to know that even that little knowledge that has been given about the spirit? Yeah? Because I think it is possible to know something about the spirit, which has been breathed into Adam. Yeah. So now this is the spirit that God breathed into the body of Adam. The Quran, Surah 15, verse 39, which I mentioned in my last lecture. فَإِذَا سَوَيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. So that when we fashion, proportion Adam, then we breathe that spirit into him. So that spirit, the nature of that spirit, it's from that which Allah says, min ruhi, my spirit, of my spirit, that was blown into Adam. That's why Ghazali talks about this more about that book, in which his pneumatology was discussed. I told last time that Al-Ghazali had a book, and which I mentioned earlier, the title, that this basically talks about his pneumatology, the science of the spirit, which is different from the ordinary psychology. Yes, that is what he breathed into the body. what is the metaphysical spirit. Now, as far as the biophysical manifestation, yes, this I'm repeating here, the psychic spirit studied by the physicians. Now, what is important to be noted here is that the state of health of the psychic spirit is a determining factor of both physical and spiritual health. Somehow, that psychic spirit, which in a sense lie in between the physical heart and that spirit, it is a determining factor of both physical and spiritual health. Now, what is the connection between the body and the spiritual heart or the self? Al-Ghazali explains a lot in answering to this in this question, that connection between the body and the four terms. There is, but here I just mentioned the spiritual heart or the self. Now, Al-Ghazali makes the point that the spiritual heart or soul or spirit is an earthly journey. Now, the physical body serves as its vehicle, which God has created in excellent shape. So why Al-Ghazali did not want to separate the body from the spirit in discussion about the health, precisely because the physical body is and cannot be separated really from the heart, from the spiritual heart in terms of function, in terms of relationship. Now, because it serves as his vehicle. Here, he looks at body more as a kind of as a vehicle, which is to serve the soul. I quote here from the part of the Ihya, the wonders of the heart. Now, beginning of quote, the heart must therefore get its supply of provision from this world. The body is as a vehicle, markaba, by which it comes into contact with this world. Thus, the body needs to be cared for and preserved. And it is preserved only by procuring for it such food and other things that as are suitable for it, and by warding off from it the causes of destruction, which are repugnant to it and destroy it. End of quote. So that's how Al-Ghazali described the relationship between the spiritual heart and the body. So it is very of course the body is excellent shape created by God, but still we have to look after this vehicle for the sake of the heart, for the safety of the heart. We have to look after the body insofar as it is a vehicle, as long as we are in our journey on earth. When we die, that vehicle will be left behind here on earth, but somehow in the history of the spiritual heart is linked to the history of the vehicle itself. Now, Al-Ghazali discusses in detail how the spiritual heart fulfills the bodily needs through its controls and regulations of all man's natural powers. On this aspect, Ghazali discusses mainly, in a sense, he brings his knowledge from biology, psychology, both cognitive and behavioral, and also what he calls spiritual anthropology. In other words, the science of man, of human beings from the spiritual perspective. So I'm bringing this is important. I think that's been ignored. I think, of course, you're using the word here. I'm using the word here, spiritual anthropology, as distinct from physical anthropology or cultural anthropology studied by modern scholars. Now, so the spiritual heart needs to be fulfilled, the needs of that. And in fact, the bodily needs they have to be known. Now, the heart's governance of the body, and the rest of the microcosmic kingdom involves 6 powers. Al-Ghazali came up very, very interesting discussion of the 6 powers that govern in fact, they contributed to the house governance of the body. Namely, these are the appetites, the shahwa, anger, ghadab, impulse, qudra, apprehension, mudrika, intellect, reason, aql, will, irada. Right? These are the 6 powers that are important to the understanding of how the heart governs the body. But of course, these are all things that are necessary to the human constitution. But the situation is much more complex because there are satanic forces that function as outlaws and rebels in the kingdom. Satan, as we are reminded in the Quran, is our greatest enemy. Satan has his own natural forces functioning within our human constitution. Yeah, Ghazali refers to them as outlaws, rebels. Now, Islamic psychology, from the view of Al-Ghazali, has to address the implications of all this, the implications of all these 6 powers and the satanic forces for integral human health. Now, I draw here the analogy between physical and spiritual health. All right. On one side, you have the conditions for physical health. On the other side, conditions for spiritual health. So this is the analogy. First, regarding food. For the physical body, that's for physical health. Yes, we need that healthy food. So in the case of the spiritual health, it's intellectual food. And there is knowledge, useful knowledge. So the spiritual heart needs intellectual food, which consists of useful knowledge. To emphasize that, useful knowledge, because useless knowledge that is not benefit, will not contribute to the health of the person. So that is the first element of analogy regarding food. So in both cases, we need healthy food. Now, the other one is physical exercise. All right. Now, and there, in the case of the spiritual health, well, there are 2 things to be seen here when it comes to the spiritual health. It is interesting here that Al-Ghazali includes the observance of religious duties as contributing to what, as a kind of analogy to the physical exercise. But Al-Ghazali added another thing. Basically this what we call this meditation and contemplation, which he calls riyada and nafs. In Malay, we use the word riyada from Arabic, of course, now to refer to physical exercise. Yeah, riyada. So the word riyada is used both in reference to physical and spiritual exercises. In other words, Al-Ghazali here referring to meditation and contemplation as riyada and nafs. It's also the name interesting for many, as maybe someone want to know, or I'm a student of mathematics. The word riyadiyah referring to mathematics, because in classical times, mathematics is regarded as a very, very as a kind of a mental exercise. Yeah, riyada. So mathematics serves that function. But anyway, that in the case of the physical health, you have that physical exercise. In the case of spiritual health, all right, at the level of the Sharia, so the observance of the prayer, fasting, they all contribute to physical health as well. They are religious rituals. Yeah, the prayer, the fasting, especially these two, have been regarded as also contributing to physical health. But more important is the kinds of what you call the riyada and nafs, referring to dhikr, the invocation of God, the invocation of so many spiritual formula to do it in a very consistent way. So basically what it comes under meditation and contemplation. Now, another one for physical health, of course, Al-Ghazali will say that we have to go for regular consultation with a physician. We do that. Medical checkup every now and then. We go for that. And in the same thing for spiritual health, we have to also to have regular consultation with physicians of the soul. Sometimes Al-Ghazali call it physicians of the religion. So we have two types of physicians: physicians of the body and physicians of the soul. So in each case, I mean, we have to consult the authorities, the experts. So it is very interesting analogy between physical and spiritual health. Now I would like to discuss the 3 states of health of the soul, which is Al-Ghazali refers to the 3 states of health of the soul, which are mentioned in the Quran. So I try to collect various points, various things that Al-Ghazali associate with each of these 3 states. Now, so this is important. Quran reminds us of 3 states of health of the soul. You're referring to the health of the nafs now. So the state number 1, Al-Ghazali is referring to what is referred in the Quran as nafsul ammara bisu. You go to the Quran, Surah Yusuf, Surah 12, verse 53. I quote here that verse, that was 53. Here I read the translation. But I absolve not my own soul. Surely the soul commands to evil, save whom my Lord may show mercy. Truly, my Lord is forgiving, merciful. The force of the argument here, or what is interests us, is that this verse is telling us that is the soul that commands to evil. Let me here read that verse in the in Arabic, the original Arabic online. Wama ubarri'u nafsi, I do not absolve my own self or my own soul of blame. Right? Then the in nafsa, yeah? in nafsa la'ammaratun bisu, surely the soul commands to evil. Illa ma rahima rabbi, inna rabbi ghafurur rahim. Save my Lord, save whom my Lord may show mercy. Truly my Lord is forgiving, merciful. Now I do not want to go into in a sense the difference of opinion between regarding this verse, regarding whose words is, whether it is whether these words were uttered by Prophet Yusuf, alayhi salam, or whether by these are words of the Aziz wife who was accusing Prophet Yusuf of seducing him, because the ulama, the mufassirun, the interpreters of the Quran, are divided on this. But it's important is the content of the, because it is possible. If you look carefully at the content of the verse, in other words, it is possible. Either view is possible. But why we're interested here is that there is within the human being that soul which commands to evil. So basically, this is the what's called the lower soul. So let's go at some points here from Al-Ghazali, how what is the importance of this state of the health of the soul. Yeah, Nasul Ammarah bisu. So how Al-Ghazali describes this state of the soul? First of all, it is a blameworthy soul. Soul with blameworthy qualities, with vices, with what I call rodail. Instead of fadail, you have rodail. That is the blameworthy qualities. Sifat mazmuma. Yeah? What I call blameworthy qualities. Now, Ghazali also refers to this soul as an angry and greedy soul. The soul that is angry, easily angry and greedy. Now, this soul, I quote here, this soul lifts off its opposition and becomes submissive and obedient to the demands of the fleshly appetites, the shahwa, and the invitations of Satan and of God. This is the, I give this quotation because it is very, very important how Al-Ghazali describes this soul. So the soul that commands to evil, Nafsul Ammara, it does not oppose. It's not opposed to what we call the things that will only lead us, or rather to what we call the invitation of Satan, the satanic inclinations. This soul, this of that opposition, becomes submissive and obedient to the demands of the appetites. Now, this soul belongs to the party of Shaitan. It is far removed from God. And this was also referred to the animal soul. And nafs al-hayawaniyah, it is not man's real nature. Now, another thing to know is that this soul is using the intelligence, our intelligence, for evil purposes. That intelligence which serves either good or evil purposes. So that depends on the state of the soul. Now, it is man's worst enemy, and this is the state of psychological illness. This is important conclusion. Yeah? What is referred to as this nafs and ammarah bisu, this defines the state of psychological illness because of many things, of many different things that contribute to our illness. Now, then the state number 2, all right, what do you call this? Nafs and lawama. Nafs and lawama, the verse, the Surah 75, Al-Qiyamah, Surah 75, verse 2. I produce here the translation, and I do call to witness the self-reproaching soul and nafs al-lawama. So this is the self-blaming soul. In sense, the self is self-critical. This is the self-reproaching soul. Now, I would like to quote here because very interesting the context in which the verse appears. that will help us understand the nature of this reproaching soul. Okay, now as far as this verse itself, if you refer to the Quran, all right, the Arabic version, the verse in the Quran, all right, wala uqsimu bin nafsil lawama, wala uqsimu bin nafsil lawama, and I do call to witness the self-reproaching soul. Now, what is interesting is the verse before it and the verse after it. So the verse before it, which is verse 1 of that surah, La uqsimu bi yawmil qiyamah. I do call to witness the resurrection day. That is the first verse appearing before this. I do call to witness the resurrection day. Now, the third verse, which is after this, ayahsabul insan allan najma'a izama. Does man think that we cannot assemble his bone? Ayahsabu al-insan allan najma'a izama. Does man think that we cannot assemble his bone? And then, of course, the fourth verse, Bala qadirina ala an nusawwiya bana. Bana ana. Banana. Bala qadirina ala an nusawwiya bana. Banana. Nay, we are able to put together in perfect order the very tips of his fingers. Now, if we reflect on this verse, all right. So the first verse, I do call to witness the resurrection day. So God reminds, that the Yawm Qiyamah will come, the resurrection day will come, and then talk about God calls to witness the an-nafs al-lawama. Now, the third verse, does man think that we cannot assemble his bone? So God now addressing the people who deny the resurrection day. And what did God answer? How did God provide the answer to those who deny this? Well, he said, we are able to the question posed by those who disbelieve in the last day, in the resurrection day. Does man think that we cannot assemble his bone? And God said, we are able to put together in perfect order the very tips of his fingers. Of course, in our modern time, this has been cited as example of a Quran we are able to know in order to contain scientific facts, because in our modern knowledge is telling us that Allah is able to create everyone unique, as a unique person. In other words, our fingerprints is unique. My fingerprints are unique. No two people having the same fingerprints. All right. So it's no problem for us, for Allah, to raise human beings with their own individuality on the same day, because here God has been able to create each human being unique, with having unique fingerprints. Now, so in relation to the self-reproaching soul, in other words, that self-critical soul, this is the soul that is conscious of salvation, the soul that is conscious of the last day. And when the soul is reminded by Allah, it readily accepts that reminder from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That basically tells a lot about the nature of this soul. Now, how Al-Ghazali described the state of the soul quickly. First, it is self-critical, self-reproaching soul. Then the soul strives to drive off and oppose the fleshly appetites. Then the soul reproaches its possessor whenever he falls short in the worship of his master. So this is the self-critical. Then this is praiseworthy soul with praiseworthy qualities or virtues. Yeah? The sifa, this mahmuda. Then the healthy soul, but not completely at rest and contented. Healthy, but not completely at rest and contented. And then conscious of man's true self, essence, and real nature. The soul knows God and all other noble things. The soul has conscience. Right? In other words, conscious of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. All right? Conscious of halal and haram. This is the soul's conscience. And then it is conscious of salvation, that the soul has to be saved, that our soul, that we will be judged, will be evaluated, so that that consciousness, and of course this is state of psychological wellness. So wellness, psychological wellness, is defined in terms of all this. Okay, next to the third state, and also the last here. Yeah, now we have another state of the soul, which is nafsul mutma'inna. Translation: O thou soul at peace, and nafs at mutma'inna, return unto thy Lord, contenting, enter among my servants, enter my garden. This is Surah Al-Fajr, this 89 verses 20 to 30. Ya ayatan nafsul mutma'inna, irji ila rabbika radiyatan mardiyah, fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. All right, this is the that verse. Now, how does Al-Ghazali describe the state of the soul? First of all, it is the most praiseworthy soul, the soul at rest under God's command, content and contenting, opposition to the fleshly appetites, free of agitation, the real essence of man, having perfect knowledge of God as far as it is possible for man, psychological wellness in its perfect state. So this is psychological wellness in its perfect state, because even more healthy than the nafs al-lawama. Now, this is the soul of the perfect man, al-insan al-kamil. This is the soul that is experiencing a habitual reunion with God. Now, the Quranic verse under discussion that we taught just now, so irji ila rabbik, return to thy Lord. So this is a verse under, in other words, it is God's open invitation to accomplish souls for reunion. Al-Ghazali here is basically, taking up the position of the Sufis regarding the soul of the perfect man. Of course, perfect man, the most perfect man is none other than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. All right. Now I'll go through. So time I have. All right. Basically now talk about psychological wellness, the good qualities of the soul, the ideal characteristics that mention. I'm producing here not everything, because it's a lot. Yeah. If we read the various parts of Ihya Ulumuddin, in Al-Ghazali referring to many qualities of the soul, and here, of course, the good qualities, the ideal characteristics that we all should have. First of all, the question of good conduct, having good conduct. So here, therefore, good conduct is an external manifestation of that a good quality of the soul. Good inside, good outside. So if to talk in other words, is the inner qualities of the human being will influence, will shape the external conduct, our conduct. So the good conduct, the heaviest of all, is the balance, knowledge. Something hidden, sorry, yeah. Yes. All right. So first of all, top on the list is good conduct, which Al-Ghazali says is the heaviest, quoting a hadith, which is the heaviest for all attributes in the balance. Knowledge is the root of good conduct, good discernment. That's the first point. Now, the second one is truthfulness and sincerity. These human virtues, human qualities, which is identified with wellness, truthfulness and sincerity, compassion and kindness, benevolence, wisdom, God-fearing, forgiveness, enjoining goodness, patience, sabr, not to be angry, and when anger conducts itself under knowledge and Sharia, it can be turned beautiful. When the beauty of such anger is called previous. This is I got that from Ghazali here. Of course, not to be angry, but of course, anger has its own place, as its own role. We are not angels. We are not, we have that the quality having anger, but the question is that anger here that should conduct itself under knowledge and the Sharia. Then it can be termed beautiful. The beauty of such anger is called bravery. Then generosity, shame, all these are very, very central to the ideal characteristics of the human person. Now, in terms of psychological illnesses, these are the things among the many things that Al-Ghazali mentioned: greed, passion, anger, and pride. The four major illnesses, the cardinal sins. He grouped these four as among the most important illnesses that inflict the human heart: greed, passion, anger, and pride. The other one is habitual lying and insincerity, hypocrisy, nifaq, hatred and envy, miserliness, and dangers of the tongue. Ghazali spends quite a lot also on the dangers of the tongue: useless talk, quarreling, dispute, rebuke, scolding, harsh words, cursing, lying, backbiting, and self-praise. These are the major items in the list of psychological illnesses. All right, now I want to conclude my presentation today regarding Ghazali's understanding of psychological health. Now, when I try to look at the whole thing and to look inside, to have the whole picture of what Ghazali wanted to convey to us, Al-Ghazali's understanding of psychological health embraces intellectual, rational, mental health. This is the health of intelligence. Spiritual health is health of the heart, and moral and ethical or behavioral health. Physical health is integrated into this broad perspective of psychological health. So basically, it's an integral health. The the health of intelligence, health of heart, health of the moral ethical, which is health of the soul, and the physical, even the physical health. Now, the range of examples of virtues and vices mentioned by Al-Ghazali points clearly to his broad concept of psychological health. And Al-Ghazali's views on how to attain psychological well-being and how to treat psychological diseases will be presented in my coming lecture. But that's all I want to say this today. But before I just welcome question, I think I forgot to mention about this the Al-Ghazali's question of mental health, because Al-Ghazali refers to the internal senses, like the philosophers. Ghazali also accepts the 5 internal senses, which he, as for him, which are located by him in the brain, right? In terms of, for example, say memory. Yeah? This memory is one internal sense that's stated in the brain. So, in other words, there are factors he talk about which affect the power of memory. Of course, during that time, memory is very, very important. In our own time, we tend to belittle it, precisely because of technology. Technology is taking care, of memory. But before, that is very important. And he talked about what were the factors that influenced the that part of mental health called memory. So having good memory is a virtue, is a virtue of mental health. All right, thank you very much, Brother Said Jamaluddin. This is just my presentation today regarding some broad outlines of what Al-Ghazali's understanding of psychological health is. It is quite it's quite broad, of course, it can be detailed out, yeah. And I hope this is of help to some to some of you. So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear Professor Osman Bakar. Thank you so much for a great presentation. And before we start the question and answers, everybody, if you could give a digital applause or open up your microphones and just give physical applause. We were so blessed to have such a great teacher, Murabi, as Professor Osman, shedding light about Imam Ghazali, rahimullah's perspectives on mental health, of psychological well-being. Very thorough presentation, very beneficial for all of us who are either seekers of knowledge or students in psychology, or even mental health professionals and scholars, of course. Find it very valuable to speak about the tripartite state of our nafs and soul and ego, and also what you also alluded to, Professor Osman, with the vices and virtues. It's so important, and that's something that we could, as for instance, mental health professionals, utilize in our clinical practice. I was actually thinking also, Professor Osman, with regards to Sheikh Muhammad Maulud, I'm sure you know about him, and his categorization inspired by Imam Ghazali's work in the Ihya with regards to how to remove vices, takhalli, vices and spiritual diseases, and doing the opposite. And it seems like we were so much further ahead than modern Western psychology, actually, who started to speak about this type of behavior refinement and CBT behavior change maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago. We were writing manuscripts 1,000 years ago. So I'm always so intrigued and so excited when we could revisit these traditional sources for actually applying it in clinical practice. So I think I speak for all of us that we will benefit so much from your excellent lecture. Barakallahu feekum, Professor, once more. It's an honor to learn from you. So we will go to some questions. Yes.
Brother Sir, pardon me. Sorry, of course, today I'm not discussing the treatment, the therapeutic aspect, the treatment of all these different spiritual diseases, or how to overcome the vices. That will be done in my coming lecture, inshallah. Yeah.
Inshallah.
Go into details how Al-Ghazali proposed to treat all these different psychological diseases.
MashaAllah, barakallah. We're excited for next lecture already now, so we're looking forward to it. And it's so much gems that we can utilize, really. So thank you so much, dear Professor. I just want to highlight to all of you, brothers and sisters and participants, students, seekers of knowledge, scholars, mental health professionals, write your questions in the Zoom chat, and Sister Yusra and I will do our best to address them to Professor Osman. We already got a lot of questions, Professor Osman, so I hope you're ready for answering some of them, inshallah.
Yes,
we also want to highlight that this program today is a collaboration between ISIP, the International Students of Islamic Psychology, and Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies, and Renewal at ISTAC-IIUM, the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, and the International Islamic University of Malaysia. So let's go. We have Brother Tariq Abdul Wahab, mashallah. He has written many questions, Professor Osman. He is very, mashallah, very excellent questions here. So I will address one or two of them because we have other excellent brothers and sisters who are also asking questions. So I'm trying to sort out which one will be most efficient. By the way, dear brothers and sisters, if it's okay, just ask questions with regards to today's session and what Professor Osman spoke about today. So he is asking Professor Osman, which of all those elements should we identify ourselves with? Given that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from mud and breathed into us from his spirit, which seems two fully opposing elements.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, of course, Professor Osman. So he is asking, which of all those elements should we identify ourselves with? Given that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from mud and breathed into us from his spirit, which seems two fully opposing elements.
All right. Thank you. Yes, it is why opposition comes in, why there's opposition, is because we have elements from the spiritual world. Now, whereas our body, the physical elements, of course, from this earth, but that opposition it's not really the thing. The fact that it is possible to put all the different components of the human person in a state of balance. Remember, I said, why is the purpose of the purpose? Our purpose is how to overcome the fragmented tendencies. In other words, we are fragmented. Each component, if allowed to itself, then will lead us into different directions. But he gives us the essence, our essence. It is that essence which is the center of our being. It is that center which should govern the body. I think so therefore we have to understand this, what is called the spiritual heart. That is called the roh. That is called the soul, and that is called the intelligence. They all contribute to that balance that we call health. If we fail to do that, then we will be, facing this challenge of existence, and that's the existential challenge. The Quran, Revelation provides, our religion provides answers to this. In others, we have to know ourselves, know thyself, and religion provides that, who we are. Basically, the answer to that question is to know who we are, and to know who we are, we have to know Allah Ta'ala. Yeah, Allah has created us in His image. All right. So part of knowing ourselves, basically knowing knowing the attributes of God, because He gives us those attributes. All right. The compassion, for example, Allah is compassionate. So we, as a as an image of God, we are also compassionate. But as the Ghazali would say, no, our compassion cannot be compared with the divine compassion. But in terms of the absoluteness, in terms of the attitude, but the point is, we have that attribute of compassion. More important is knowledge. That's why the intelligence. Yeah. Why is the food? In order to be healthy, in terms of our intelligence, yeah, we must have the right knowledge. So that analogy is very, very useful. The compare physical health and spiritual health. In order to be healthy physically, we need to have good food. We have good food. So in order to have good food, and then we observe good dietary habits. To eat good food. To eat, in other words, the right amount. It's not just the food is good, but also the right amount. Not too much, not too less. Right? It's in other words, that golden mean, the what they call the wasatya, that moderation in taking. So the and then in terms of intellect is having, I emphasize, useful knowledge. So we cannot be healthy spiritually, intellectually, unless we have as our food the good knowledge. That's why Islam devotes a lot of Islamic tradition devoted a lot to the kind of knowledge that we should have. The knowledge, the obligatory knowledge, the recommended knowledge, and so on. The fardu ain, the fardu kifaya, in detail. It's just for us to, just as we, we take good food, just take the good knowledge. Yeah. I think the Aqidah, the Sharia, has provided us with how to become healthy. It just depends on us. Your question, that the question of opposition has been too exaggerated. I think yes, they've been. I think precisely because in the West, influenced by a religious tradition in which the spirit and the body had been, understood in a very, very confrontational way. But that was not the case in the Islamic tradition. Yeah, the Islamic perspective is unity. Tawheed is the perspective of Islamic psychology is Tawhidic psychology. Tawhid means unity. All things are interrelated, and not only interrelated, but they constitute balance and harmony. That is the whole teaching of Islam. So, but I'm not saying that there is no opposition. Yes, there is opposition within, but not to the extent. Yeah. So in other words, that tension between the higher soul and the lower soul, that is real. Yeah, that is real. But as I explained, he said somehow, if every element is allowed to be given its role and function, its proper role and function, then that opposition will disappear. Yeah. So I think just my response to that question. Can say more. Can say a lot can be said about that.
MashaAllah, such a great answer, and it just made me realize, Professor Osman, regarding the whole body-mind split of Western way of looking at psychology, where they are splitting the mind and the body and the soul, and neglecting the holistic connection of these God-given entities to us. And it made me realize also of what you said, which is so astonishing, is that we tend to look at our bodies as machines today. We're not looking at them as they have rights over us as well, which we know Islamically that they have. And we tend to also to really neglect that health, even etymologically from the English language, means whole, to be whole. It comes from whole. And this aspect, I think we subconsciously, even as Muslims, even though our, as you say, our tradition, psychology is Tawhidi, we tend to maybe subconsciously internalize these notions of balance and balancing, which you call also the Vasatiyya approach. So thank you so much for reminding us, Professor. I really appreciate it. So let's go to Sister Fatima Khurram from Pakistan. She wants to ask following question, dear Ustad, Professor. Can we clarify the name of the book he just mentioned, the one that's not for everyone, that talks about the connection between the physical heart and the spiritual heart? That's her question. She's referring to a book.
The book is in English. What is to be withheld from the non-specialists? The Arabic title, but that's in the previous. I discussed that in the previous discussion. Yeah. It is published. It is published in Pakistan by Muhammad Ashraf. You know, it's an old book. No, I do not know whether this has been printed, published. I bought that in the long time ago in 1980s. You know, in the 1980s.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, that book. It's a small book explaining about the meaning of taswiyah, meaning nafkun, explaining that verse, the breathing of the soul of the spirit into the body of Adam. If you remember, those who attended my previous lecture, I said that book tells us much of what may be described as a Ghazali's pneumatology, the science of the spirit, the science of ruh.
Barakallahu feekum, Ustad. Thank you so much, Professor. So there is a sister, Shinma. Shinma is asking, does it mean like dunya as a prisoner for a believer, Professor? Just like the Quranic ayat, or this is actually a hadith, worldly life is a prison for the believer, that the messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said the world is a prison for the believer and a paradise for the unbeliever. So I guess she's asking you, Professor, if dunya is a prison for the believer.
Yeah. So what's the question? I was asking me to explain what that means. What the meaning
I think
of
she's
that?
asking, maybe what that means, but also, is it a prison? Like, it's also a question mark there.
Yeah, I understand, because I've come across before, many years ago, some people saying, oh, that hadith cannot be true, because it said, how can this is one reason why Muslims are backward and so on. We are rejecting the world and saying that the world is a prison, is a prison for the believer. Well, actually, if we understand the nature of the world, the world has two tendencies, in the sense that you can see the world in two ways. All right. One is to look at the world from the spiritual perspective. Then, in other words, the world is a source of tendencies that pull us away from the spiritual world, from God. Yeah. So that's one. If you look from that aspect, yes, that is true. That is we accept that statement to be true. The world is a source of challenges, the source of in other words, material things, physical things. Everything that's in the world is pulling us away from our spiritual life, from God. God, taking away from God. But there is another thing from we see from the other side of the world as a bridge to the hereafter. The world is something, Al-Ghazali said, well, whatever we want, and in other words, this is a place for us to prepare for ourselves for the world and for the hereafter. Then, if you look at that, then there is something positive. So the world has both positive and negative aspects. It is up to us. So that hadith has to be understood from the perspective of that negative tendencies, and when our soul is too weak to resist these temptations that the world is presenting to us, when it's source of temptation. So the world can be a source of unbelief. That's why so many people use the argument of the world to maintain a kind of the atheism, rejection of God. But then there are believers who use the same world as arguments for faith in God. So the same world is seen by people of faith and people without faith in different way. Yeah. So it's not to be understood in absolute sense that the world is a prison somehow and nothing else. I think that's my response to that. You have to understand the context in which that statement is made. It's nothing absolute. That because we can also give counter arguments that for people of the believer see the world as transparent. In other, the faith, the light of faith is able to see what is besides, what is behind the physical world. The light of faith will enable us to see what is beyond but for people without faith, right? Then it's not transparent, but in other words, it is somehow we don't see anything. We don't see anything except the world, nothing beyond the world.
Barakallah Fiqh, such an excellent answer. It reminded me, Professor, about the rubber band. If you look at the rubber band, it's like a rubber band effect. So the world needs to pull you back in order to know how to pull forward. Because when you work with yourself spiritually, engaging in spiritual practices, then the rubber band will then move forward and it will catapult you towards the metaphysical, the transcendent, right? So we need this rubber band to pull. First, if you want to shoot the arrow, you need to pull it down. So that's what the dunya does sometimes. And then you train yourself, and when it bursts, you get that spiritual, you come on a spiritual higher, maqam, So that's very beautiful, actually, pull and push in a sense. How are we supposed to push if we don't know how to pull? Subhanallah. That's great. Barakallahu fikum, Ustad. So many questions, dear Professor Osman. Let's see here. So we have a question from Moht Shazani Masri. The question is Imam Ghazali's Satan one's inner demon that originates from a sickly human spirit, or a jinnic, demonic extra human beings, or both?
Sorry, I don't get it. I don't get the question.
No problem, Professor. It was my fault. Let me iterate it again. He's asking, is Al-Ghazali's Satan one's inner demon that originates from a sickly human spirit, or a jinnic, demonic, extra human beings, or both?
I'm not sure whether I get really what the questioner is trying to again. From the view point of Al-Ghazali, right? of course, the satanic, I was referring to satanic forces, all right? Yes, Satan is the chief enemy of the human being, but I'm sure some of you may come across all right, the sayings of the Prophet that everyone has these satanic forces. You know, these satanic forces are part of the human microcosm. Yeah, satanic forces exist outside the human person, exist in the world, but this also exists in the human person as part of the human constitution. That's based on that correspondence between the microcosm and the microcosm. Yeah, we first of all we have to observe this one. Since Satan, since Shaitan, and the what I call his forces, his army. Ghazali used the word his army, the army of Satan, the party of Satan, that exists in the external universe. So therefore, they also exist in our microcosmic kingdom. Right now, that's part of God's creation. In other words, Satan has his own function in universe, but it is up to us how to protect ourselves from that, from the evil tendencies of Satan. Now, Satan strives on that lower soul. So we have that lower soul. First of all, the appetite. We have appetites for food, appetite for sleep, appetite for sex, appetite for all kinds of the appetites that we associate with the animal, with animal soul. Now, the animal soul itself is necessary for human existence. Yeah, since we have to live here on earth, the body needs those appetites. All right. The question of, in other words, the desire, the lower soul has desires, but then we also have the higher desires. So the question now, we should not let our higher desires be subdued by the lower desires, and this is where control, regulation is necessary. The first thing, of course, and that's why God provided the Sharia. Why is the purpose of the Sharia? Why is the purpose of divine law? The purpose of the law is to help us control these setting forces. Because first of all, we don't know where to look, where these hidden forces, that we cannot see them. Yeah, we cannot see these subtle forces, but they know us. Satan can see us. We cannot see Satan. Yeah, so thanks to religion, which Allah revealed to us, and then the Sharia. Basically, if we follow the Sharia, then more than half of the problem regarding the satanic forces we already be solved. As in the case of the Prophet said, Satan has become has served his purpose, or Satan has become Muslim. In his case. In this case, Satan has submitted to the divine plan, to God. So we who are not following that the Sharia, who are not following the teachings of our religion, are being influenced by being seduced, by Satan and so on. So yes, it is basically a question of how to lead the proper way of life, the way of life that would and somehow keep us away, not under the control of Satan.
Barakallahu fikum, Ustad.
So
thank you so much,
yes,
Professor.
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what is expected of me to regarding that satanic thing.
I think you answered it perfectly. I mean, and gave us a better insight of understanding, as you say, the whole dimension of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. Barakallahu feekum, Professor. So there is a question from Brother Nuruddin from Indonesia. It's quite a thorough question, actually, very interesting one. So he's asking, Professor Osman Bakar, is there a connection between the spiritual heart and the brain in Al-Ghazali Psychology? Did Ghazali modify the chariot allegory used by Plato in explaining the human soul, wherein the charioteer, which is Plato's, represents reason, is replaced by the spiritual heart? According to Ghazali psychology, will health of the soul only be achieved perfectly when a person practices Islamic teachings, not other spiritualities? Thank you.
Well, there's several issues there that mentioned in the question. Well, in terms, I think back again to the concept of heart, soul, spirit, and intelligence or akal in Al-Ghazali's scheme. Yeah. Now, in the question of not at the center, because at the center, of course, means akal refers to the same essential, substance of the human being. But intelligence has its biophysical manifestation, including, say, the brain. All right. Now, in the case of Al-Ghazali, the question here is that intelligence that is centered in the heart, all right, and its intelligence here is mentioned as the eye of the heart, according to him. According to Islamic tradition, intellect is the eye of the heart. The heart as eye, and that eye is the intellect, which is different from reason here. Let me emphasize here. In Islamic tradition, as well as in the Western, the pre-modern Western tradition, like in the Latin world, intellect is different from reason. Reason is more centered on the brain. The locus of the reason is the brain. All right, but we know very well, this brain in the head, whereas the heart is in the center, the breast of our body, same physical and as well as spiritual. Now, there are two types of how knowledge is obtained. In fact, there's analogy between the physical eye and the spiritual eye, the intellect. How do we see? In terms of the physical eye, we can perceive a thing directly without any intermediary. Our physical eye looks at objects, look at the color. We see a green, an object of green color. There's not the intermediary in the sense to realize that. All right, but that's the kind of knowledge that we obtain through reasoning, through logic. That intermediate. So in a sense, we have to go to process our thinking in order to come to some conclusion. But that's not the case with intellect. Like the eye, the intellect sees things also directly. Yeah, that's called intuition, for example. So intuition is different from the ordinary reasoning. Now, then if we look at, say, the Plato, which is top down, all right. Plato starts from that, yeah, from that intellect down, coming down to the lowest possible, all right. Now, of course, we live a time we are infatuated with this with what we call this robotic intelligence. robotic intelligence is intelligent, but that intelligence is the lowest in a sense, because that corresponds to kind of a certain part of the internal senses. Yeah, I remember Ghazali put the internal senses, which are faculties of the soul, the lower faculties of the soul, of intelligence, basically, in the brain. Now, but from the Islamic perspective, from Ghazali perspective, the intelligence can be influenced by metaphysical factors, or it can be influenced by physical factors. There are two. I know in the study of, for example, cognitive intelligence in the modern context, in a modern context, is all the intelligence all coming from here below, from the physical world. So as if our brain is only conditioned by physical factors from the physical world, but that is not accepted by Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali would say that yes, that is true, but in addition to that, the brain, all right, the intelligence, the cerebral intelligence, is also influenced from metaphysical factors. So it's two ways. It's both top down and bottom up. So a lot of the what's called mental health. So Al-Ghazali would say this concern the internal senses apart from the physical senses. Okay.
Barakallahu fikum. It's so interesting discussion, Professor, because as you say, in West, we tend to put health in the mental. So we speak, for instance, about mental health or Muslim mental health or refugee mental health. And is health only located in the mind or in the aql? That's the question. And I think you answered it in a very holistic manner. So we need to re-educate ourselves, because I think we sometimes tend to internalize these quite frankly reductionistic and also Western way of looking at health. So yeah, thank you so much for shedding light about that notion, and we really appreciate it. Ustad, we're going out of time now because the time limit is up. It's up to you to decide. We always are very mindful of your precious time. You've been so generous with us as your students, and we really appreciate it. Would you like me to ask you 2 questions more, or shall we just break for now? And
yes, can have one or two more. Yeah, I can have one or two more.
Okay, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We really appreciate it. So we'll take 2 more questions. And dear brothers and sisters and participants, please forgive us that we are not able to address all of the questions, but there's so many great questions. And we hope that you guys will join the WhatsApp group we created, by the way. So dear brothers and sisters, we created a WhatsApp group only for the Al-Ghazali lecture series so that you guys can discuss together and learn from each other. I'm sure a lot of you also have a lot of reflections and answer to these excellent questions. So the last 2 questions will be, so Kauthar from US is asking very simply, by praised shame, is it meant haya? Is praised shame haya, Ustad?
Sorry?
She is asking if praised shame means haya in Arabic. Praised shame.
French?
Praised shame. I think it is haya actually. So she is asking if praised shame, praised, like if it's a shame that is praiseworthy from Allah, a shame that Allah appreciates, that's haya, right? That is haya in Arabic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, exactly. Barakallahu fikum. So that was an easy question. And Jazakallah khairan, Professor. The last question will be from Sister Roslina Wati from Indonesia. She is asking 2 questions. So let me take the second question actually here. Professor Bakar, you mentioned in lecture 1 that we should see the Ghazalian perspective to be an epistemology. In modern science, the epistemology of Ghazalian perspective on the notion of the heart as a subtletonous substance is not acceptable in the Western psychology. How could we argue the simplistic definition of the heart by the modern sciences in an argumentative paper? Interesting.
Well, it is it is I mean, it is difficult to grant what is expected, what is hoped by people who do not accept certain things. In other words, it all goes back. It all boils down to the problem that we are having in epistemology. Basically, this is a debate in epistemology that has been going on for a long time. Basically the sources of knowledge. What are the different avenues that are open to us in order to understand reality? So reality, from the Islamic point of view, and including by Al-Ghazali, is hierarchical in nature. In other words, and therefore, when you have a kind of hierarchical reality, how do we understand this reality? How do we perceive this reality? If we close our mind to also the idea, the corresponding idea of hierarchy of the methods, the hierarchy of the powers, the cognitive powers to perceive things. There should be kind of symmetry between the two, or consider a one-to-one correspondence. There's an old principle, I think, which came from the Greek, especially Aristotle. Only the like can know the like. Only the like can know the like. In other words, if you want to perceive the nature of something, so the power used to perceive that, the perceiving power must also be of the same nature. So we cannot expect to know a level of reality by means of something which comes from a lower level of reality. So we are asking, in other words, how can we convince? I think that is the difference of perspective, basically, epistemological perspective. If we want to understand God, we want to understand a spiritual reality, then we have to make use of our spiritual cognitive power that is also spiritual in nature, which means that intellect or the heart. So yes, it is. I agree that's the problem, because the heart is not recognized as a source of perceptive power outside in the Western tradition. It's all about what is in the brain, not the heart. Yeah. So that's where we differ. That's where I differ. So how to bring understanding between those perspectives? Well, we have to sit down and talk. But at the moment, I see problem. Yeah, I see problem because but what I can say is that nowadays more and more people in the West, even among scientists, are beginning to approach this, to accept the idea that knowledge does not only come through this our reasoning, but also through our heart. So basically, well, Islam accepts both. Islam accepts both cerebral knowledge and cardiac knowledge, if you should use that word, knowledge of the heart. So knowledge of the brain and knowledge of the heart. We accept both. And where do they differ? That we have to discuss. I mean, it's a lot, and to understand the two modes. Yeah, how the heart perceives truth and how reason perceives truth. It's something which I discussed. Something which I discussed also in my book, classification of knowledge in Islam, in the subject on methodology.
MashaAllah. Barakallahu
Thank you.
fikum, Ustad. Such a great way to summarize our lecture today with you. We will also share the link to your books on Amazon for people to purchase and support. Perhaps this question would heart to heart, it connects Professor Osman to the concept of murabata, heart linking between the sheikh and the students, and between us as brothers and sisters, and also with our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's something we always need to remind ourselves of, the murabata, the connection. So thank you so much for reminding us about that. Thank you for all of your excellent questions, dear brothers and sisters. Please forgive us and forgive me for all of the shortcomings today. If we have done anything wrong in the organization team, it's all us, and all the good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Round of applause again to our dear excellent Murabbi and teacher, Professor Dr. Osman Bakar. Thank you so much for being so generous of your time. We're really looking forward to listen to you next time, which will be the first Saturday next month, Saturday the 2nd of July. The same time will be the third lecture. We will email out to all of you who registered, dear excellent brothers and sisters, scholars, students, seekers of knowledge, practitioners, with all the reading materials, all the quizzes, all the slides, etc. And also the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, ISIP's YouTube channel, within 3 days for you to benefit from it. Also, more than welcome to invite others, brothers and sisters, to join the lecture series. We will share links and everything, so you can share it in all of your networks. Join our WhatsApp group for discussion, Al-Ghazali discussion, where you can discuss the content of the lecture. You can also join ISIP's Islamic Psychology WhatsApp group for general resources as well. I also want to thank Sister Yusra for doing an amazing job in organizing here today together with us, and also Sister Fatima is always doing an excellent job in her khidmah. May Allah bless both of you and accept your khidmah. And thank you all, brothers and sisters, for joining us today. From the behalf of ISIP and Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at ISTAC-IIUM, the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, and International Islamic University of Malaysia, we want to thank you all for joining us today and to listen to our excellent Professor Osman Bakar. And we're really looking forward to meet you all in next month. If you have any question regarding the lecture series, quizzes, certificates, etc., please email admin@isip.foundation, inshallah. Without any further ado, I will stop the recording now. And we will keep the Zoom open for all of you who want to just, briefly say hi or salam. And Professor Osman, if you don't want to say anything else, we don't want to take your time. Well, thank you so much, Professor, as always. Such an honor to be a student of yours. And send our regards to your family, inshallah, Professor, as always. And by the way, I love your shirt, Professor. It's such a beautiful shirt. Is it the Malaysian style, or it's very beautiful? Inshallah, I will buy one also so we can connect. Murabata connection with us through our clothes as well. Barakallahu fikum, Professor. Have a great day. Send our regards to your family. Thank you so much, Professor. Honored to have you.
Yes, I see you.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. Thank you so much.